Submit your own content on info@millenniumnews24.com. Download the Millennium News 24 app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Stay tuned with Millennium TV and Millennium News 24 for the latest updates.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Jineea Butler, and welcome. Have you missed me? I missed you. I had a tough week this week. If you didn't know, from around the world, one of our giants of the civil rights movement of America has passed away. My mentor, Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., passed away last week on the 17th, on February 17th, 2026. And I think the tributes have been amazing this week. And I wanted to pay today's show on the group to him and tell you all about my relationship with him and what we accomplished during that time. So shout out to Millennium News 24. This is the New American Perspective. I'm your host, Jineea Butler, and we are on the group today. And I hope that I can take you on a journey with me on how I began this journey. So this isn't about retrospective. It's a reckoning with time, because history doesn't move in straight lines. It moves through people. And some people don't just witness history, they architect it. Reverend Jesse Jackson is one of those people. But before the speeches, before the anniversaries, before the headlines, there was work happening quietly, strategically, and behind closed doors. And that's where my story begins. And so, if I could take you back to 2008, that was when I met him. Shout out to Andrew Carr, who invited me to the Rainbow Push Coalition, my first steering committee meeting in 2008. And, I was a young pup, as you could see, still young, but I was young at that time. And, I'm going into a boardroom with Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and, a lot of other, prestigious people around the room. So everybody would go around the room and introduce themselves. And here I am, I'm talking about hip hop, right? I'm talking about hip hop, and everybody's going around the room. I'm Lynn this, and I'm this, and I run this, and I run that. And, again, 2008, so it gets all the way around to me. And so it's very interesting in how this happened. So 2008, I walked into this boardroom that would change how I understood power, not performative power, not celebrity power, but institutional power. This wasn't about ego. This wasn't about infrastructure. Reverend Jackson didn't invite me into the room to be impressed. He invited me to be prepared, and that was the real thing. You had to be prepared at this table at this time. He didn't say sit and observe. He said pay attention, because once you see how decisions are made, you can never pretend you don't know. And so he turned to me. I'll just never forget this moment. He was in his chair, and he was spinning around the boardroom, and he was spinning around, and he got to me, boom, and he banged his fist just like that, like I just made it sound. He banged his fist and was like, "So what you got?" And I was like, I couldn't tell you what I said, but I had an idea for what we could do for hip hop, and I believe I rattled it off. And he's looking at me because I'm talking so fast. This is my first true interaction with him, and he said, "Let's go with it." Who knew? He said, "Let's go with it." And that was the beginning of my journey with Reverend Jackson. And it was an amazing moment for me at that point. Excuse me. Sorry. If you don't know New York, excuse me, New York City area, we just got railed with snow, and Mom Dami's got to show, excuse me, to show shovelers out, and I'm trying not to catch a cold, but you see how that's going so far. And so, like I said, so that first day, and I was by myself. I didn't have any of my team with me at that point. And, excuse me, again, shout out to Andrew Carr, and who invited me to the table and gave me that point to sit in this meeting. And then I met John Mitchell. Rest in peace. Um, Rest in peace to John Mitchell, and all the folks at the Rainbow Push who welcomed me in at that point, because they all saw this beginning. And so John Mitchell, he pulled me to the side afterwards. He says, okay, we're going to work on this, because he knew what Reverend meant, of what let's go with it. Now, I don't know that I actually knew what he meant at that point when he said, let's go with it. But I soon will know. And that's what today's show is about this, because this, that nervousness and that realization that I was at this table now. I had worked on Rikers Island. I tell my story all the time. Rikers Island, social services, not yet youth services, but I had started there. So I had, I was coming with a good background. I was the director of career development for the Doe Fund. Maybe the Doe Fund in New York City, the director of career, the director of the director over at BRC, Homeless Service Agency, of the shelters and things like that. So I came with a little pep in my step, but there's nothing that can get you prepared for that moment with a giant of this magnitude, and then to be able to survive at that point too. I'm looking, sorry, I'm trying to get I'm trying to post at the same time. So yeah, so it's nothing like that moment. So that first session, we we went in, and so we had a session, hip hop. Where do we go from here? And so that was the first session that we had, and it was a big town hall meeting. We had Londell McMillan, who owns the Source magazine. We had Sway from MTV. He was at MTV at the time, and now he's Sway's Universe. We had Aunt Marshall of the Lyricist Lounge, Ernie Panicoli, hip hop photographer, myself, who was like young on the totem pole at the point, um, and we had a real conversation. Grouchy Greg from allhiphop.com. And so we convened our first conversation, and what we saw on this platform is that this is something that people wanted to talk about. And I had a spat on this panel with Londell McMillan, because he was talking about, oh, this is how you get into hip hop, and my whole point wasn't about how you get into hip hop. It was, how do we maximize this $684 billion that we were working with. And so I kind of at this point began to change the conversation of what hip hop panels were like, because hip hop panels, in the past were, oh, you could touch, see, and feel people in the hip hop industry, and they'll tell you, how they're doing, and not exactly how you can connect. And that was the change agent that Reverend Jackson allowed me to do on that platform, because then we were able to talk about so many things, and we were able to help hip hop evolve into itself. And again, this is the Wall Street Conference, right? The Wall Street Project Economic Summit. And so this is what they're talking about: access to capital. They're talking with big banks, and they're talking, with corporations, and how do we move money, and how do we move the needle for Black America. And here goes little old me and little old us. Shout out to Manny Ayala, Alizé Jones, CL, Corey Llewellyn, who David McKenzie, who at this point had helped me put this panel together. And this first panel was huge. It was big enough that we got to the next, one. This was the 13th anniversary is where I started with this. And so we got to the next one. I think I got there during the 12th anniversary. So by like 2010, the work became more formal. That's when we held our first real session. Like, that was a town hall. Let's see, Andrew Carr wanted to see if there was interest, and then it was big interest. And so it was a real session, and it wasn't just a photo op, it was a working session. And the mission started becoming clear, right? How do we align culture with responsibility? So again, Reverend Jackson was this change agent that made you think and made you push every real button with inside yourself in order to go forward, in order to move the mission and move the understanding of what was happening forward. And like I said, he's a giant at this point, right? He's a giant because he was talking, this is a man that, registered 3 million people to vote, ran for president in 1984 and 1988. This is a person who got prisoners of war, went to countries and brought prisoners home for America, went to go talk to, foreign leaders and say, let our people go. This is who this man was. And then he was giving us a chance. And then let's go back to a little bit, is that C. Dolores Tucker, and he had a little spout with hip hop way back in the day. And so hip hop was on edge about him, coming up. And because he had a little spout with hip hop, because C. Dolores Tucker and the women, they all were going against hip hop, and Tupac was calling her out her name, and Reverend Jackson got involved, and they started calling him out his name as well. So he was in a place where he was looking at me like, now I hope these people don't turn on me like they did before. And I'm like, no, they're not my group. We're not going to turn on you, And so again, he gave us a real opportunity, and I couldn't see doing anything but great stuff with this opportunity, because I couldn't see, well, just, when you say hip hop, right? You think of, the current person who's on top of the world, the T.I.s, the Lil Waynes. When we started, that's who was at the top of the game, right? And so I wasn't there, because at the time Lil Wayne was singing "Go and Get Your Money, Little Duffel Bag Boy," right? So how am I to bring this person onto a stage of this caliber and say, this is us, knowing that hip hop was way deeper than this? And so again, they wanted the big names. Now, I could have went and fished for the big names, but we'd have been nothing, it'd have just been names. Look at how Kamala Harris used Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, and it's not their fault, right? They put them on a stage where they weren't ready to be. And so I decided at this point that no, I'm not going to put these people on the stage. I'm going to show this audience who we really are at hip hop, and that we are still alive in a viable entity. So when we talk about access to capital, let's show this group who we are and what we're made of. And that's what the business of hip hop became in this process. at the Wall Street, starting at the Wall Street Project Economic Summit. So we're going to take a break and we're going to come back to more reflections and more insight on how my relationship with Reverend Jackson came up into this day. So we'll be right back here on Millennium News 24. I'm your host, Jineea Butler, and I'll be right back. I'll be right back here on Millennium News 24.
Hello viewers, you are watching Millennium News 24. America and global villages Saint America independence built by immigrants, manufacturers, roads, highways, educations, healthcare, IT, scientists, space, business development to all thousands of multimedia and all major social media platforms and news network in America. Millennium News 24, one of truthfully news networks in America and global news organizations. Please watch, follow and subscribe. We are in iOS and Android devices, Roku, Amazon, Apple devices, all smart TV, globally Horizon satellite, social media Millennium News 24, Millennium TV 24. Website www.millenniumnews24.com and www.millenniumtv24.com. Thank you.
And we are back. We are back here on Millennium News 24. And I'm your host, Jineea Butler. And we are reflecting today on Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. If you're just tuning in, Reverend Jesse Jackson, the great Reverend Jesse Jackson, passed away on February 17th, has left us now for almost a week, and we're railing. And so let me say this, you hear what's going on with him. And so the Speaker of the House, and I hope that he's going to change this very soon, the Speaker of the House, Congressman Mike Johnson, denied a reverend to lay in the rotunda at at the Capitol building. And, it's just ludicrous. I mean, a man of this magnitude, and they say, well, this is reserved for, certain people, but not Reverend Jesse Jackson, the man who was next to Dr. King, who has a 30-foot statue in DC, not Reverend Jackson, who registered 3 million people at one time in 84 and 88, and really got Black people involved into the process. Maybe they're mad at that. Not Reverend Jackson, who rescued hostages from overseas, the prisoners of war. Not Reverend Jackson, who loved all people and brought understanding to all people and pushed America to love all people. Not him should be in the rotunda, and that disappoints me, because that is an abuse of power. And I hope, somebody from the Republican Party is listening, because that is an abuse of power. And that is, when you're not able to look and see that this man has transcended generations. I remember very first interaction with him before I met him was when I was a young girl growing up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And I heard on the TV one night, I am somebody. And I was going through a time in my life where who am I, right? Who am I as a little child? And I heard him saying, I am somebody. Repeat after me, I am somebody. So now I was able to embody that. So now, as an adult, when I meet him, I already realize why I'm so involved and how I was able to get so involved in the Rainbow Push Coalition, in the Wall Street Project Economic Summit, because I had been through discrimination as a child. So it was easy for me to connect. It was easy for me to do the work. And little did I know that Reverend Jackson was paying attention to who I was, to who I am. He was paying attention. And so legends who didn't need validation but understood obligation, right? We started bringing in the credibility of the people of the Wall Street Project. So, like I was saying, our first sessions or hip hop, where do we go from here? From the streets to the suites. And, I look at how this all transcended and what the platform and the power of the platform really was. One of our first sessions, we were with Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer, I got a picture of him running out of the session because he didn't know where we were working together. Where you got these hip hop people in here and you got all these people, and it gave my community an opportunity to put on suits, to be amongst the greats, to see and hear people talk about politics. He gave us that opportunity, and that opportunity wasn't there at that point. Anybody who was doing hip hop stuff, they were over in another room, but he combined us together. And he made us all look at each other, where we brought young, old, some of everybody into one room. Reverend Jackson commanded that. And then, like I said, Chuck Schumer, he was at one of our first events, our first toast to hip hop with Pebbly Pooh. And we just had a great showing out. And Chuck Schumer, he said his piece ran out. Wait, can we get a picture with you? And now Chuck Schumer is siphoning money for the Hip Hop Museum, and I'm not mad at that at all, okay? That is beautiful, but in the beginning, that wasn't him, okay? And this is the type of power that we were able to show people that we are worthy, that we are worth the conversation. So now Chuck Schumer, he's putting all of this money into the Hip Hop Museum, coming out, oh, hip hop. He sees it now because AOC was about to trounce on him for the Senate. Now, I don't know what she's going to do now because we're on edge. We're hearing that she might run for president, might be trying to be Kamala Harris's vice president, or she still might be running for Senate. But Chuck Schumer understands the value of hip hop, and he got that from Reverend Jackson's platform. Now, he might not say it like I'm saying it, but I seen it firsthand. I seen him run out the room. And now I see him making sure the hip hop museum's getting millions of dollars for that. Another person who came on our platform, and I'll show some pictures about this. Another person who came on our platform was our next year. We had, I think it was From the Streets to the Suites. And we had the historian, Herb Boyd. Oh my God, great. One of the African-American NYU professors. Again, what I did was I wanted to be able to be on this stage with them. Reverend was giving us a point, giving us an opportunity to level up. So I brought in scholars. I just didn't bring in rappers to talk the talk that they couldn't talk. But hip hop is still and has proven to be way more than just the rapper. It's a culture. And we were able to showcase that going forward. We had artists like Roxanne Shante, Hakeem Green from Channel Live. We even had Rosa Clemente, the first Afro-Latina to run for president on the independent, I think it's the independent party line. And she came and, she started seeing what we were doing and saying, listen, you got to be a part of something. We had Ernie, I'll try to, I forget his, sorry. He ended up being the second time mayor of Mount Vernon. And he came on our platform because he wanted to connect the dots, and he got back in. These were all the things that we were able to do. Then Ruben Diaz, in his first year as the Bronx borough president, we made him pledge his allegiance to hip hop. And you know what he's doing today? He is the chairman of the board of the Hip Hop Museum. Another person, another elected official who siphoned money to the hip hop community, but came on our platform with Reverend Jackson. And what I'm trying to see and what I want you to know is what that transformative power looked like. That you didn't just come on a platform with Reverend Jackson and get nothing out of it. Like I said, the hip hop community goes back and forth with itself because they do not understand what it really meant. Are we on this platform? We're on this huge platform with these people who didn't want us to be there. Let's be real about that too. They're like, what is she and what are they doing? But Reverend Jackson understood culture. He understood where we were, and he understood that we needed a place to incubate. So as I take you on this journey about a man who didn't just shape history, he shaped people. He reshaped the hip hop community. Because back in 2009, nobody was calling anybody legends. Nobody. You go back and you show me a legend of hip hop in 2009, 2008, or before. You show me how we were talking about entrepreneurship and building business. You show me that we're doing the business that we're doing now. Show me. Because I think it needs to be understood. Because working along Reverend Jackson was never about performance. It was about discipline. You had to show up and you had to be on point. He taught me that movements don't survive on emotion alone. They survive on structure, on consistency, on moral clarity. He reminded me often that charisma fades, okay? You could smile all day, but character echoes. I watched him navigate rooms where power tried to shrink him, and he would speak truth to power. And I learned how to stand tall without becoming too loud. Well, I don't know about that loud part, but loud to the point where I had to scream and yell. One of the most misunderstood things about Reverend Jackson is how deeply he understood the culture, especially hip hop. He really didn't fear it. He didn't want nobody calling him out his name. He didn't dismiss it. He challenged it to mature. He challenged us to mature. He made me mature. He believed hip hop was a sleeping giant, capable of shaping economics, politics, and global consciousness if we respected our own power. I remember he looked at me on the stage with uh, Ruben Diaz, who doesn't recognize us at all, doesn't recognize the Hip Hop Union or what happened or how he became the Hip Hop Museum, but we'll get to that. I remember he looked at me and he said, "This can change the world." Yes, this is what I've been saying to you, because they thought that we were going to come out in hoodies and sweatshirts and sneakers, and my people stepped up. And again, I'll show you some of these pictures of this room. We changed how hip hop look. Shout out to Alizé Jones. Shout out to Manny Ayala. Shout out to Dave Ambrose. Shout out to Rob Swartz. Shout out to CL, Corey CL. Shout out to Samson Styles, who brought BT in to see us and put us on that stage. I didn't do it by myself. Shout out to Christian Ruart. Shout out. If you were a part of this, look at hip hop now. We're going to come right back here on Millennium News 24, and we're going to talk more about Reverend Jackson and my walk with him. And we're on the group here on Millennium News 24. And we are back here on Millennium News 24. I'm your host, Jineea Butler, and I am talking about the late, great Reverend Jackson. If you are just joining us, he passed away, sadly, February 17th, but not without doing his work. I'm sure when he got to heaven, he got that great, well done, good, and faithful servant. And shout out to his family, Mrs. Jackson, his wife, his children, all 6 of them, who are doing a wonderful job, where I know that their heart is broken like the rest of us. And so, again, I'm talking about this giant of a man, Reverend Jesse Jackson, who took me and the Hip Hop Union and gave us a place to incubate, gave us a place to bounce off the walls, gave us a place. And he largely paid for most of it, because my community didn't want to pay, $500 for the whole conference versus coming to just the hip hop piece. So he understood that, and he understood that we've got to get this right. And we did. We did, Reverend. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I will forever represent you. I will not allow people to forget you. in this process, in the hip hop community, because you were a citizen of hip hop. I am somebody, and he was a citizen of hip hop and will ever remain. Together, we worked on reconnecting hip hop to responsibility, to community, to future generations, not just nostalgia, not trends, but legacy, real legacy. Over the years, I saw Reverend Jackson endure criticism, erasure, and moments where the world pretended it had moved on from him. You know, there were times where he was calling all these great, illustrious people on the phone, and they weren't answering the phone. But history doesn't move on from truth. He stayed consistent when consistency wasn't popular. You couldn't call everybody every year, let me get some more money, let me get some more money. I don't know that people understood what he was doing. He stayed principled when compromise looked tempting, didn't compromise himself. He stayed hopeful when cynicism was easier. He found a way and didn't talk crazy or nasty about people. And through it all, he never stopped teaching. Even when he wasn't speaking, he was showing. I remember he would come into our hip hop rooms, and sometimes he would just sit down. What is this girl talking about? And he would just sit in the front row. No, I don't want to come up. I want to sit and I want to listen to what they're saying. I want to hear this conversation. And everybody was scared, of course, when he came in your room, because he was going to judge you whether you was going to be there next year or not. And he would come and sit and just be quiet and listen. And then I would hear, when he would talk to young people, I would hear that come out in his words because he understood. And then he would always say that hip hop had this transformative power, that we had something that we weren't using to the best of our abilities, the maximizing the power that we had in hip hop. So today, as I stand here in this moment, I understand I didn't fully grasp this back then. Reverend Jackson wasn't preparing us for applause. He was preparing us for stewardship. My Bishop David G. Evans preached a few years ago on Easter, heroes know when to die. And I thought, wow, that's, do heroes know when to die? Knowing that Reverend Jackson was and is a hero. I wanted to see how that was going to play out. And true enough, heroes know when to die. Because Reverend Jackson passing away on February 17th, 2026 is ironic and iconic to the people that knew his schedule. We did Wall Street Project Economic Summit every year during that time. We would just be ending our week. February 13th to the 17th to the 18th. I've got all events. And so what he's reminding us and what he's making sure of is the work doesn't stop. So every year, during the time that we usually have the Wall Street Project, now, if you think that you're going to stop working, he said, no, no, no. What you will be doing is you will be lifting up me and the work that we have done. For years to come, forever. And I heard that so loud and clear, because you know how on Facebook you get the reminders of what happened the year before, the year before, the year before. Well, I got like 10 of those. This what you did last year. This what you did the year before that. This what you did 5 years ago. This what you did 10 years ago. All at the same time. All Wall Street Project Economic Summit. So what he was doing, what he did is reminding us that the work doesn't stop here. To keep going. He did his job. He went until the wheels fell off. And then I had a conversation with Flavor Flav, and he went until dragged himself some more. Made people have him show up. I'm not staying in the house. I need to be outside with people because that's who he was. A man of the people. You see that this man was in 1,000 places at one time. He was with everybody from Aretha Franklin to Chris Tucker to Marvin Gaye, playing basketball with Marvin Gaye, to Michael Jackson, to Oprah Winfrey, to Magic Johnson, to little old Jineea Butler and the Hip Hop Union. And gave us the time and attention and took enough time to teach. Took enough time to let us grow. So he wasn't preparing us for the applause, like I said. He was preparing us for the work ahead, to carry on ideas, to protect movements from dilution, to lead without losing our soul, because he was a true man. He didn't walk around with a bunch of security, and he was a tall man, about 6'4", 6'5", and he wasn't scared of the people. So I say to you today, the work didn't end with him, it transferred. And I know that I got a call and a charge on my life from being next to someone who had done so much work. The only thing that I can do is continue the work. The only thing that I can do is make sure people know who he is, the young people. We had artists like Roxanne Shante, Pete Rock, yes, Havoc from Mobb Deep, D-Dot, Master P, who already changed the game in their respects. And then came back to get their legendary status. Entrepreneurs like Master P, who showed that ownership wasn't theory. Shout out to Kango Kid, because he was one who believed in the movement. He was one that understood that we needed to do something. And our biggest event was the 5-year anniversary of the Hip Hop Union. And that was an amazing event. It was sponsored by Hip Hop TV. We all put in on that. And that's when I seen the work really come to fruition. Because again, we had been pushing most of the times with little to no budget to get the right people in the room. Because our community, they want money. They want money to come talk about what they don't know, right? So a lot of times, people are like, no, I can't come, and we didn't have a budget to do what we were supposed to do. But that 5-year anniversary transformed hip-hop and made the 50th anniversary of hip-hop truly possible. And there's nothing that anybody can say to me about that. Had we not been doing this work on this platform with Reverend Jackson, we would not have been prepared for the 50th anniversary. We wouldn't have been there. And that's a fact. And again, everybody's not running around, oh, thank you, Reverend Jackson. The people who understand and know are. Shout out to Chuck Creekmore, who moderated a few sessions and told us about his journey with all hip hop. Ralph McDaniels came in, Dr. Bob Lee. You know, we had an array of people, and all these people, they're on now, you know, doing something else on behalf of hip hop, but they got their start here too. They incubated on this most powerful stage. The stage was about access to capital. And now look at Roxanne Shante. She's got her show on Sirius XM, Rock the Bells with LL Cool J. Shout out to her. Her movie, Rock the Bells. Her movie, Roxanne, did well on Netflix. Freeway Rick Ross was nominated for an Emmy after being on our platform. Now, people will probably fight and say this is not true, but I got the facts. And I will spend my time making sure that people understand that that platform, the Rainbow Push Coalition with the Wall Street Project Economic Summit, changed things, changed lives. Reverend Jackson did that. So we'll be right back here on Millennium News 24 talking about more, our last 15 minutes about more of how Reverend Jackson transformed America and hip hop too. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Millennium News 24, your trusted source for accurate, unbiased news. We're here to bring you the stories that matter most from America and around the world with integrity and a commitment to truth. In today's world, where misinformation can easily spread, having access to reliable news is more important than ever. At Millennium News 24, we aim to cut through the noise by delivering clear, fact-based reporting. Whether you're following major events or looking for in-depth analysis, we are here to serve you with transparency and respect for all communities regardless of color, wealth, or religion. This beautiful America was built by the resilience of its people, immigrants, entrepreneurs, doctors, and everyday individuals working together to create something great. It's this spirit that inspires us to provide you with news that's inclusive, honest, and relevant. We believe that informed citizens are the foundation of a strong society, and we strive to give you the knowledge you need to make a difference. From breaking news to insightful features, we bring you comprehensive coverage on politics, economics, health, culture, and much more. We believe that everyone deserves access to the truth, and we are proud to be a part of a global network that connects people through information. Stay informed by following us on your devices, including iOS, Android, Roku, Amazon, Apple TV, and Smart TVS. And for global access, we're also available on Horizon Satellite. Visit us at www.millenniumtv24.com or www.millenniumnews24.com to stay updated at Millennium News 24. Our mission is to promote unity, understanding, and progress in a rapidly changing world. Join us as we work to inspire positive action through the power of truth. Thank you for watching. Follow us, subscribe, and stay informed.
And we are back here on Millennium News 24, and I am, sad that today's episode of Reflections on Reverend Jackson is coming to a fast end, but again, it's just a transformative beginning, and now we have to live life without the voice that we've heard for so many years, but we can always go back. If you listen to his 1984 campaign and all of the people that he touched all over the world, I am somebody, right? And we changed that. Dr. King said, I am a man, right? Reverend Jackson said, I am somebody. And now today, more than ever, which we came up with back in 2009, I am a citizen. The logical transformation of what's next. And that's where we find ourselves today. Looking at who we are as citizens of the United States, what part we're going to play, and where we take it from here. What we're going to do as a result of knowing such a man. And again, Congressman Mike Johnson, you should be ashamed of yourself because you tell on yourself by just completely saying, no, he can't lay in the rotunda. Why not? Reverend Billy Graham was in there. Rosa Parks was in there. It's the 100th anniversary of Black History Month. And I'll shout out President Trump because we had the Black History Month celebration last week, but I can't talk about that right now because I've got to talk about this giant who I was able to call friend. Who does that? Who gets to know somebody of that magnitude and able to know that, entrusted me to know that I will carry on. I understood that he was giving us the blueprint. And what I'm going to do is follow the blueprint of the great man. That's what I'm going to do. Now, what are you going to do? We've been touched by him one way or another. People get mad. Oh, he called us African Americans. That's because at the point we didn't have any identity. And it made sense that the people of color come from the country of color. He gave us identity. Now everybody uses it, right? Because everybody's saying, well, we're people of color too. But don't knock him for doing the job that you didn't do, for having the courage. I remember when he knocked down Silicon Valley. Wow, he went to Silicon Valley. He said, there's no blacks on the board of the TikToks, of the Facebooks, of the Microsofts, everything that was going on in Silicon Valley. He said, there's no blacks on the board. I bet you that has changed. I know Barbara Lee, BET, she left BET and she's on one of them boards over there. And so many people were put in position and made money. He made monsters out of our community. He is to be celebrated. When we were approaching, we weren't really looking at it as the 50th anniversary. You know, we had Kool Herc come out. We brought everybody out. We started giving out the Living Legend Awards. And started, like Nori says now, giving them their flowers. We started naming living legends. We were working in Chicago. We did, shout out to John Blassingame. We did an awesome fashion show at the Hilton Hotel. Who does that? I curated a fashion show that was where they do the Oscars. Same stage, the same everything. On my 40th birthday. Excuse me? It was real. And his legacy is real. And it is to be honored. Shout out to Minister Louis Farrakhan, who's on Savior's Day, gave love to Reverend Jackson and everybody. Oh, they was fighting and they was this and that. Well, he gave that love, that pure love. And he told all of those Muslims, I will never disrespect my brother. So this man will live on in our hearts. If you got a chance to meet him, that meant that you were transformed by him. He was a great, a great Q, Omega Sci-Fi, everybody, with every time he would see him, even when his arm was hurting, he'd throw up that little Q sign. He was a strong man. He would put on a baseball hat, whatever hat he had, that's where he was. And that's what he was a part of, everything and everybody. So he can't be missed. This is somebody who lived, I think, 50 years after Dr. King and continued the work until he couldn't continue anymore, until his last breath, where God had to take his speech and say, it's okay, Jesse, it's okay. You can sit down. You've said enough. You've made enough new heroes that are going to carry your torch. And I'm happy to know plenty of them. I'm happy to laugh and I'm sure hug at his services. His services are next week and he's lying in state at the Rainbow Push this week, Tuesday and Wednesday. And then next week, Thursday and Friday, he'll have his homegoing services. And it's just a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to have known him. It's a beautiful thing to be loved by him. It's a beautiful thing to have been challenged by him. He didn't flatter me. He challenged me to operate at a level where excuses were no longer applied. He told me directly that proximity to power meant responsibility. Use it correctly. No hiding behind trends, no blending in, no shrinking. He expected precision and discipline and follow through. And that's when I realized this wasn't mentorship alone. This was a transfer of duty. I remember one day at Reverend Sharpton's National Action Network, he took his hat off and he put it on my head. And to me, that was him crowning me and telling me to carry this torch. So today, I don't mourn Reverend Jesse Jackson. I honor him. I truly do. By standing in what he prepared me for. And it's a big world out here. But the work isn't finished. And Congressman Mike Johnson not allowing him to lie in the Capitol with the respect from America tells us that the work is not finished. It's assigned. And as long as culture still shapes consciousness, this responsibility remains. Reverend Jackson didn't just ask us to keep hope alive. He trained us to carry it correctly. And that is what I intend to do. That's my show for today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoy my recap of 15, 18 years with Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. And I've gotten more. Maybe, AB on Wednesday, we can G-check him and talk about, all the wonderful things and all the wonderful people that we came in contact with in his midst. But, Reverend, I love you. You're great. And I will carry your name and your torch forever. Your soldier, Jineea Butler. I'll see you Wednesday at 1.